Maureen is an international speaker, writer, storyteller, and songbird who believes in the miraculous power of storytelling for healing and transformation. She's the founder and spiritual director for Speakeasy. She helps people tell their truth so they can expand their reach, leave their mark, and honor their lives. You can learn more at maureenmuldoon.com.
Hi, Sherry. Thank you so much. Today, we get to delve into Martha. What I came to find is something that I'm super excited about sharing. The two main ideas that will lift you above every fray in every way to facilitate you having a miraculous day. Not to sound too Dr. Seussian, but that's how it comes out sometimes. But before all that, I just wanted to say peace. Let peace be with you. Our whole goal here is peace. We say love is our religion, care is our currency, peace is our goal. You know, and because we do this practice every day, we no longer have to make peace that a goal. It's now a mode of being. And let peace settle in on you during our time together. And allow yourself to move from the ordinary into the extraordinary. Like really let yourself drop into it while you're sitting in service to your spiritual well-being. And may God move mountains on your behalf as you sit in service to your spiritual well-being. So last week we covered the story of Mary and Martha and how Mary was wise for allowing herself to sit and receive her soul food. And we also talked about the miracle of allowing God's love to support and inspire you. And I shared a prayer that my mom taught me and all of my siblings when we were young. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, be with us on our way. Holy Spirit, inspire us. And it was a prayer that we said, every time we crossed the threshold of our house. And this week I investigated it because I didn't know what the origins of it. And it turns out it was from a bishop, William Wetscheld, and he's from the Catholic Diocese of Pittsburgh, and who's credited with that prayer. And his hope was that we would call in this tribe, this holy family, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, to accompany us on our journey as we make our way home, which I think is a beautiful way to kick off December 1st as we watch the Holy Family move once more symbolically towards the birth of Christ. And as Course in Miracles lovers, we already know that this birth is happening within us, that we are the church, that we are the temple, that we are the place where Jesus is born. So recently, I've been pitching this idea to anybody who will sit for a second and listen to me about blessing your home, blessing your temple. And I hope that you do continue to bless your home. And I went to my acupuncturist this past week and I told her how I was blessing my home, and going into each room and saying a prayer and asking the house, what it's to be used for. And she said to me, oh yeah, you got to do that. And when you bless your home, she said, be sure to use a bell to help shift the vibration of the environment through the use of sound. And last week we talked about the Om, and I invited you to be that instrument where you're oming. So again, here is life repeating itself. And I share that with you because many of us maybe step away from traditional religions. It doesn't mean that we need to leave the ritual behind. We can all become our own little altar boys and altar girls and ring the bell and welcome in the sacred. This story that we've been entertaining, Martha and Mary, this week we're going to flip the coin because every story has two sides, and we're going to take a pass to the other side of the story. And here's the story one more time if you're not familiar with it. The story goes, as Jesus and his disciples were moving through on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha had opened her home to him. And she had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. And she came to him and she said, I don't know why this line always cracks me up, but if there's ever a play, I want to play Martha just so I get to say this line. Lord, don't you care that my sister's left me to do all the work? Tell her to get up and help me. So Jesus says to her, Martha, Martha. It's interesting in the Bible, he says her name twice. Like sometimes people have to call you back to yourself because you're so far down the road with your hair on fire that they have to say your name twice. Or as your mom used to say, using your middle name to get your attention to remember yourself. He says to her, you are worried and upset about many things, and few are needed, or indeed only one. And Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. So once again, in all good stories, everything is symbolic, and we can find ourselves in all of the symbols and all of the players. And last week we talked about Mary and the Mary mindfulness, the version of ourselves that is so beautifully devoted and drawn to love with the gravitational pull of a star as we sit and we sup at the sacred, this part of us that seeks first God, because the grace and the wisdom and the spiritual sustenance that comes from that practice is like our oxygen. And we've learned that to be true, and we've learned how to value that. It's like going to the ocean, as we talked about last week, which I still love that idea of the ocean. And it's about us opening ourselves up to that fresh water, and then becoming, or rather recognizing, that we are the innate channels of that love, that we don't have to give what we don't have. And so we get to plug in and allow ourselves to be channels of that love. So it's really important that we do go to that practice first. This is what we do every day when we're on the calls with Miracles Live 365. And if you've never taken a round with us, this would be really the year to do it. It is a beautiful thing, as Mari already suggested. It's a daily coaching call that you get on every single day. We share this incredible connections and the shifts that happen between us and amongst us, and truly surrendering your head, your heart, and your agendas to God's will every single morning. And most people who do go for a round end up with us for many, many rounds. So it just really speaks well of this program. So this is how we keep fresh our high resolve. And it's how we know ourselves and show ourselves as spiritual beings. And this is how we make soulful decisions, and how we move gently through the classrooms of the removal of the blocks to love. So last week I offered up this quote that I felt was very in tune with this Mary mindfulness. And it's from Franz Kafka, and it says, you don't need to leave your room. You can just remain seated at your table. Don't even listen, just simply wait. Just be quiet and still and solitary, and the world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet. I don't know about you, but that quote just lights me up. And as I said last week, it's a quote that I attempt to embody. And this is what happens when you show up to your spiritual practice. The world offers itself up. It rolls in ecstasy at your feet. And I really love this quote, and I believe that is 100% true half the time. As I said last week, this story about Mary and Martha, it's not about right and wrong. It's not about one's right and one's wrong. It's only about right timing. That's all it's about, is right timing. And we've heard, seek first God and all else is given. And that's what Mary does. She puts it first. But what is given, once it's given, you can't just hold on to it. So you have to move into your Martha, because what is given, when it's given from that true source, cannot be held back. It must be extended. And this is where we move from awareness into action. And we let the practice that's been given to you when you're still begin to flow through you. You don't receive wisdom only to hoard it away for safekeeping. This wisdom, this clarity, this insight, this goodness you receive from practice is meant to be shared. And Sherry was speaking about it, preaching about it before we even hit record. I wish you could have heard her, but she was really calling us into action around this time to open your coffers, to open yourself, to open and allow this flow to move through you in all ways. And we're living in a sea of a call for love, but you have the keys to the door that opens that limitless warehouse. Your practice should inspire your actions so that you can show up, pay attention, and tell the truth. Those are the steps that come after the practice. Show up, pay attention, and tell the truth are three of the steps that I shared in my second book, Spiritual Vixen's Guide to an Unapologetic Life. To show up means just that. It means to show up for each other, not to show off, but to show up to your potential. To show up means coming ready to meet random opportunities. This is not always as easy as it sounds because, we have, as Clive came to the, talk today with a plan of a song he was going to play and probably practiced it and was ready to play it when Spirit was like, no, you're going to play a different song. So sometimes it's hard to let go of our own plan. But as we said earlier, like when we plan, God laughs. But here's the money shot. When God plans, we laugh. When we go with God's plan, we laugh our asses off. I hope you've noticed that in your life. So we're taught from an early age, to make our plans and then also to not be too big for our britches. So we content ourselves with smallness instead of showing up. We close down on ourselves. And this smallness is a lie. It's an absolute lie. It's a game that we play when we want to play safe. And paradoxically, it's the game that we play, we always lose. In fact, when we play small, everyone loses. I'm going to share a few stories today about people playing a little bit outside their comfort zone, and we'll see how everybody wins. Littleness is like an itchy, shrunken sweater on a hot day. Like you're just not born for it. When we choose to show up, we're choosing against the littleness. We're choosing to make manifest the glory of God. That, of course, is no small thing. Littleness has offered us nothing. And as long as we play it safe and close to the vest, we'll not have peace. Peace comes not from measuring out appropriate teaspoons of life, but from the awareness of the unity in all things. And of course, A Miracle says it this way. It's essential that you accept the fact and accept it gladly that there is no form of littleness that can content you. You are free to try as many as you wish, but as long as you will be doing that, you will be delaying your homecoming. I don't know about you, but homecoming is one of the most beautiful words in the world for me. Your homecoming. Do not delay your homecoming, for you will be content only in magnitude, which is your own. It's your magnitude that gives other people the permission to open up to their own magnitude. So that's the idea of after you do your practice, you get to show up. And then the next step is to pay attention. The healer pays attention. She allows herself to see what there is to see. She doesn't deny her sight. She doesn't turn her face away in fear. Instead, she holds a neutral, steady gaze. When you face your fears, you alchemize them just by your willingness to look honestly at them. That shows somebody who has done their practice. If we're not paying attention, you'll slip into mass conscious agreement where we become pre-programmed with the dread and the lack, the limitation, the wars, the death, the diseases, and all the other nightmares that never come true. And I can say they never come true because all fear is based in illusion. And so when we say, I'm going to show up, I'm going to pay attention, I'm going to tell the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. And there's a lot of stuff that's passing as truth out there. You might notice too, none of it's true, right? Come on now. You can smell fake news when you hear it. You can feel it in your bones. Is this in alignment with love? It's a very simple filter, okay? So you get to be the voice for that truth. The truth means being rigorously honest, but you cannot tell the truth before you pay attention. You must take the temperature of the situation and be willing to actually see. If you have not done your spiritual practice, it will be harder for you to show up and pay attention because you will have a divided mind, and that will be filled with divisive thoughts that cause you to feel scattered and unfocused and self-centered and divided. And it's not a helpful state for you or anyone. And that's why I really do promote this early morning practice. I don't want to sound like I'm selling you snake oil, but in the same way that my spiritual practice, I'm almost obligated. It's an obligation when you see people drowning and to not throw them a safety net would be a cruel thing. And so I'm going to tell you what works for me. You can decide from there if you want to grab hold. So anyway, once you do your practice, the veil is lifted. And where you once found yourself in isolation and self-service, you'll find yourself being guided in sacred service that will not just serve you, but serve everyone, where you will be asked for nothing and be given everything. And here's a story that I want to share with you that I thought was absolutely delightful from one of the people that we wake up with every morning. His name is Dwight. He was sharing with us the story about going to the store on Thanksgiving to get turkey bags. I guess turkey bags, I'm a vegetarian, so we don't really cook turkey and we don't go for the tofurkey. So we just leave all that at the grocery store. But he was a day late and $1 short to get into the turkey bags, which he needed for that day. He was a little bit behind the game. And when he showed up to the store, he was actually delighted that he found there was one box left on the shelf. And he gladly grabbed that box and he turned and joyfully started to make his way towards the register when he pretty much right away bumped into an older woman who was also late to the game. And he watched her face fall as she saw on the shelf, no more turkey bags. And without thinking, he knew exactly what to do. It was not what his ego wanted him to do, but he had done his practice with us in the morning and he was on autopilot with love. And he looked at the woman and he said, "Are you looking for turkey bags?" And she nodded and he said, "Oh, well, you're in luck." And he handed her the box without a second thought. The next thing that happened was the miracle, because the woman probably had done her practice as well, was so pleased and delighted with his generosity that she opened the bag of turkey bags and she handed him one. And then she took the box to the checkout and she paid for both of them. It's a simple story, but I just love it. We do the spiritual practice so we can navigate all of these opportunities for love from this very full place and allow that goodness to flow through us, knowing that there is no limit for us. There is nothing that is withheld from us as we continue to navigate in love. We will see this time and time again. You probably have 1,000 stories of your own. If you do, I hope you share that during the conversation, because the more we hear the truth, the more we can trust in it. When you do this practice in the morning, and I do Course in Miracles, but really any practice, any sincere practice that you hold true to consistently is going to be very beneficial to you right about now. If you do your practice and then you continue to practice through showing up, through paying attention, through telling the truth, the world will also roll in ecstasy at your feet. That's how you maintain it. So we show up like Mary to our practice, and that's where we gain awareness. And then the practice moves through us, and that's where awareness is transformed into action. It's just like Hollywood. Lights, camera, action. Lights is where you enlighten yourself, when you allow yourself to be enlightened with some fresh water of love, however that practice looks for you. And then camera, where you're paying attention, where you're focusing your attention, and then action, lights, camera, action. Action is the way that love animates you. Before any action that we take here in this community, before every single action, we pray in. We pray in before every single meeting that we have. Before every decision, we do a visioning process where we ask the Holy Spirit, where would you have us go? What would you have us do? You might think, man, that must take a lot of time. It actually expands our time. Every meeting ends at exactly the right time. No one is burnt out. Everybody is well fed. That's, I think, a miracle. The board meets once a week. They steer the community. They support the individuals in our community who are going through a tough time. Somebody loses a loved one, or somebody's hard on their luck. We figure out what is ours to do, and we do it as a community. The educational team, they meet and figure out what are the classes that we want to bring to this community for their spiritual well-being. The financial team strategizes how we're going to maximize the income that is ours so that we can be in good standard with it, and we can give 10% of that to a community that we want to support that feeds us. So 10% of everything we bring in, we give to Foundation for Inner Peace for the publication of the Course in Miracles. This is what it looks like when you live your life in love. It's not just about the practice, it's about the action. This is not, as Clive was saying in a song, this is not work. It's not work at all. This action, if inspired from the awareness of my practice, becomes the extension of my practice. It's called seva. So when your practice is orchestrated in love, it's just an extension. And where you once practiced with God, and Mary goes to God, You then begin to practice with your brother, and Martha goes to her brother. They're equal, man. You got to find that sweet spot in the center. If the practice is exhausting you, if you find that this practice here with your brother is exhausting you, you might not have put God first. Because if you put God first, you will never be exhausted. I promise you that. And if you put God first and you still find yourself exhausted, then stay more with God. Like just stay there a little bit longer because you might need a more extended practice. It looks like from the story of Mary and Martha that Martha might have skipped her practice that day. That's okay. She might have forgotten to fill her well. I've had this experience in my life. I remember once while running a retreat with Regina a few years back, we were arriving at this house and we were attempting to move in and get the meal ready, and the retreatants were arriving, and it was just a lot of Martha energy. And Regina was like, "Hey, can we just pause and pray?" And I started laughing. I was like, yes, it's exactly what we need. Because as I was saying, sometimes the prayer of the morning loses its strength midday. And if we don't restore that energy that we get from the practice, we'll begin to pillage each other. We'll begin to go to each other, and we'll end up deprivated. We'll find ourselves hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. They call that HALT. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, which simply means to stop, to get still, to return to prayer, to return to practice. And like Martha, we try to get support from our brother, but not in a loving way when we're in that place where we're depleted. And we go into this kind of accusatory state where we're just tired, and we begin to, like Martha, pull people down. We're like a drowning woman trying to pull Mary under with us. And so I wonder what would happen if instead of saying, Jesus, get Mary back to work, if Martha had done a practice, if she might have remembered that there is a God within her that does all the work. I wonder also how often I attempt to gather breadcrumbs, forgetting that my father owns a bakery. The story is symbolic, when Christ comes in the story. For us, it's about when Christ enters our home, when you begin to entertain your own Christ consciousness. You no longer rearrange the chairs in the Titanic. Instead, you work on your consciousness, because form follows consciousness. And you have the consciousness that can turn water into wine, not whining, which gets you nowhere. In defense of Martha, though, what she does do right is she does take action. Action is where we actually get to play. We do this practice, and then we get to turn that practice into play. And in the Bible, it says faith without works is dead. The way that you move in the world is your gospel in action. And you could be the only good news that someone gets. Again, Sherry was saying to us earlier this morning, you got to be the living Christ. You could be the only kindness and sunlight that someone comes across on a day. You are the one who resurrects Christ. You are the one who breathes life into love. You don't even need to plan where you're going to do that or how you're going to do that. In fact, it'd be best if you didn't plan that, because you will be brought to it. It will show up on your doorstep. It will meet you in the elevator, or like Dwight, it will meet you in the aisle at the grocery store, or like me. It showed up for me at Marshall's the other day when I was standing in line. I was buying somebody a gift, and I had this big gift in my hand, and I didn't have a cart, and it was a very long line. And this man tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Hey, would you like to put that in my basket? Because I only have one thing and I have a lot of space." And I was so grateful, because I felt so cared for. I felt like, I had my own private Sherpa who was moving behind me with my cart. I didn't have to carry anything. I know that he didn't get up that morning and try and decide where to send love. He just did what love would have him do in the moment. That's what makes it so fresh baked. That's what makes it so beautiful. Love has its own intelligence. That's why a healed mind doesn't plan. Love knows the form that would be most helpful in the moment. I also know that Dwight probably didn't plan that this act of kindness for Dwight and for this man cost him nothing and gave him everything. Your works and how you appear in the world are the three-dimensionalized version of Christ. You walk as the anointed one or the crucified one. Jesus said, you know a tree by its fruit. A good tree bears good fruit. A bad tree cannot bear good fruit. They will know you by your love, so let your good works flow from you in love. So I'm going to close with this. I hear a lot of people say often, like, I want to find my joy. This brings me joy, or that brings me joy, or they bring me joy. And this is false. We think we can derive joy from what we do, but this is not true. Joy spills from us. Joy spills from you. It's a fragrance that leaves your flower after your practice. It is the scent of your practice that people can smell on you. The joy that stems from your practice will animate all of your actions and activities. The practice activates the joy. The practice activates the joy and opens this warehouse of love that streams from you, causing you to remain in that state of awareness that says, this is the perfect day. Within me dwells a light that cannot fail. I get to treat, as they say in the prayer practice, which is being taught right now. I get to treat, I get to do my spiritual practice, and then I move my feet. This means honor your internal Mary who's in practice and your Martha who's in action. And it's all quite simple, and it has been the message since the beginning of time. And it was spelled out like this in the early days. You shall love the Lord with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. This, Mary, right here. The second, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hangs the law and the prophet. It can't be any easier. That's the word.
Thank you, Maureen.